If you want to save money on your trading card purchases, we have a promo link over at 50cards.shop. Enter the promo code ATNIGHT to get 5% off your order. Hey everyone, welcome to the Nexus at Night channel, and welcome to another episode of V to Premium Transitions, the show where we tell you how to take a deck in V Premium and change it to Premium with minimal changes. I'm Atlas, and I'm here with Commander Jaime. How are you, sir?
I am doing well. What's up, amigos? Good to see everybody. And yeah, it's not Aqua Force this time.
And it's not Grand Blue, which you are also well known for playing too.
Exactly.
So what are we doing today, then?
Neo Nectar.
Neo Nectar.
Specifically Musketeers.
Thank God, because there are not a lot of famous YouTubers who do Neo Nectar as a main clan of theirs. Alright, so today we're looking at Neo Nectar and specifically Musketeers, right? Can you tell us a little bit about Musketeers?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to do a quick credit shout out before I forget. So 2 of the V Premium deck lists I got from Access Vanguard. I was brainstorming a little bit with Zelias and MCrafter 3000. So these lists are specifically theirs and they've been messing with it. Mine's the premium, and it also was a lot from David Song, who's also a topping player too. He's also on our server. So shout out to those guys for sure.
Right on.
And what Musketeers really does, in essence, especially since its old, Limit Break era days, really it retires a lot of your units to deck then your deck and call them, and then also get some benefits, whether it be power or increasing your chances of getting triggers too. On top of that, that's really the essence of it. And in V series, we get still that essence there with a little bit of oomph to it. For example, the Grade 2 Saul. I'll actually make it bigger so you guys can see that. He's very unique, where, you still blast 1, retire, you check the top 3, call anything, but if you still happen to call a trigger, you can counter blast 1 and activate that trigger, which I think is really cool and neat. Yeah, you can give something crit, you can draw from the draw trigger, kind of like Himiko in a sense from Genesis, and even if you see the over trigger, you can activate an over trigger too.
Do you remove it from the game in that case, where it's it goes on board and then you immediately remove it, draw it, do the thing, or what happens?
That's a good question. I actually haven't had the luck to actually proc an over trigger. It's been mainly crits and heals and draws for me.
Okay.
But that's a good point, because usually when the over trigger is drove check-in, it will disappear. Right. Yeah, I know. Drove checked.
Drove check-in is a way cooler way.
I know, right?
And then also, there's plant tokens, right, in Neo Nectar?
Yep. So you got cards like Sivia that actually generates tokens. These are really fodder for retirement. But there's also some synergy with Cecilia Reverse, and I think that kind of leads to what Musketeers can do now. Is her second skill. And so the second skill, as long as a Cecilia was called from deck, and your opponent's at grade 3 or greater, you can counter blast 1, lock 2 of your standing rear guards, and then this can restand. But if you have a front row locked unit, then you can rewrite it onto your Vanguard circle. So your tokens, when they get locked, they just disappear immediately too.
Yeah.
So you can have more room for your rear guard circles, because then the first go, it actually calls more units too. So you can potentially still call more units on your field during your battle phase to kind of go from there as well.
Okay. Okay, so it's a lot of calling from deck using plant tokens as fodder. Was there anything else to this deck that's worth mentioning?
In the V Premium aspect, there is no sure way to get a Cecilia Reverse from deck to make sure that you have it there. You really have to depend on checking the top 5 or checking the top 3 and hoping you get it. Really. So one build is using Vera, for example. So this lets you check the top 5, and then you call 2 of them, and then this gets an additional drive. So this will be your main Vanguard, for example.
Okay.
And then the second skill is, as long as you have the Grade 2 Saul, the one that I just showed, all of your front row rear guards also get the power as well. So then you can actually have the Cecilia Reverse get the trigger effects too. And you can restand it as a rear guard instead of a Vanguard too. So you just essentially lock the back row. So you can just have it restand as a rear guard.
Got it. Well, that's pretty cool.
No, it is pretty cool. And a lot of the other cards are kind of just like supplemental for that, just to make it happen. and dig deeper. And as you can see, this is Elias' build, so he's more aggressive too. So he's playing the 12 crits.
I see.
And including you should have the Sentinels. Huh.
One of those isn't a Sentinel. One of them should be.
Oh, there it is. You're right. I couldn't see it. Yep,
okay.
There it is.
That is?
Yep.
There it is.
There it is. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's the Sentinel crits, but yeah, just having the aggression because you're decked in, so might as well, crit them to death, and then you stack them on a restanding rear guard, like Cecilia Reverse.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Want me to move on to the second list?
Yeah, and then also, as always, deck lists will be in the description, so if you want to get a closer look.
Yeah, absolutely. So the second list, this is from Crafter 3000. So this is more of a pure Cecilia build. So if you do have the original Cecilias, then you can use these. It doesn't matter which Cecilia came from deck, as long as you have a Cecilia Reverse to see it when the timing is there.
Okay.
So the more copies of Cecilia that you can call from deck, the better. So that's why you can play max copies or 4/4. And it's also a good way to ride this as Vanguard if you haven't seen Cecilia Reverse yet. So this can at least get it as rearguard, and then you just restand as well. So it's still useful in the V Premium format. And a lot of the core, as you see, is really the same units.
Right.
Yeah, and in this build, it's the a crit build with some draw power with the draw PGs over here, as you can see.
So this is like a tankier version, I guess, or
it's more of a purer version. So think of it as like now you have 8 Cecilias in deck versus only 4 in the other one.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then going into the premium though, I think this is where I can make the jump. There's a lot more consistent ways to get the Cecilia Reverse.
This is a lot more complicated.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
It makes room for a lot of stuff too. So I think I can talk about the 2 main cards that really make it consistent. And I'll go down to the Stride. And that's actually the one that came from Premium Collection. It's only the first skill. And 9 times out of 10, you only use the first skill. So you can choose one of your rearguards and search your deck for up to 2 cards with the same grade as their rearguard and reveal them. And then you add one to hand and call the rest to rearguard. So, for example, if you have a grade 3, you can search for Cecilia Reverse, add something else like a grade 3 Heal Guardian or the Usurp Dragon to hand, and the Cecilia Reverse is called directly from deck, and it's ready to go.
Nice.
It's a sure way to make sure that you get that to
Isn't that during main phase, though? Is that...
Yeah. So in your main phase, you set up already knowing that you're going into it, having a double Vanguard attack.
Okay.
That's what's really cool.
How does the double Vanguard attack? Because you're rewriting the Cecilia in the battle phase, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct. It's almost like Raging Form in that sense.
Okay.
So you want to make sure you attack with Vanguard first, and then your Cecilia will be after that to rewrite it, so that way you can have 2 Vanguard attacks in total. You don't want to do a reverse and then all of a sudden you miss out on a Vanguard Stride attack.
And then Rotting Usurp was something you mentioned searching. So you want to explain a little bit about him?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a Stokea grade 3. It has a drop skill. So when your grade 3 or greater Vanguard is placed, you may call this to Rearguard Circle. So this procs for every time your Cecilia Reverse rides, and also the moment you stride. You're technically placing a grade 4, so you can call it as free fodder as well. And that's why I was saying that you can have a grade 3 on the field, and you can search it, or even add a grade 3 Heal Guardian for a G Guardian purpose the following turn as well. So
the Rotting Usurp also has usage in Great Nature for that same reason, or because you're blowing up your board at the end of every turn, you bring it back, make it huge, it dies. Next turn, bring it back, like just continue on. It's a continually resource. So yeah,
that's really cool.
Very interesting card.
Yeah, and I would say only maybe 2. You don't need to max out. Most of the time, I use 1. But if you get the second one and drop, both of them will come to the field, and it's good because you'll lock your field, and then your tokens will disappear, and then you have some lock cards. But the first scale of Cecilia Reverse, when it attacks, it requires 2 rearguards to retire. So after your Usurp attacks, you can retire both of them to keep calling from the deck, and that's where you can find another Cecilia Reverse, or actually just Cecilia in general. And then potentially get another rewrite for a 3rd Vanguard attack.
Right. That is very cool.
it's very powerful because you get 7 drive checks because you go 3, 2, 2, and you can easily build advantage too as well. And when you rewrite, it binds it, so it's a new unit. So even if you put triggers on it, it loses that. But since it's a new unit, even if you call like a regular Cecilia, it still can activate its effect to make this one rewrite, and then you'll just rewrite it into this one as the last Vanguard attack in the battle phase. Yep.
So because you're focusing on rewriting over and over, this is Force 1, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for reminding me. You'll be stacking Force 1, Marcus, on 1 Rigard circle.
Because you... Oh, right. So you go like swing with the thing, and then usurp comes back, swing with that. So it's hitting for like 43, 53.
Absolutely. Very easily.
Pretty wacky, for sure.
Yeah.
Shout out to my friend Danila at my locals who runs something like this. That's the only reason I know about this. He runs this. I also see that we have a lot of like other Stoicheia cards, like Rahula, and I forgot the grade 2
Alania.
Girl. Alania, yeah.
Yep.
So
I could highlight that.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
So what's kind of cool is that Musketeers do have a great early game because you're generating tokens. You can use Sau to generate advantage with triggering effects from triggers. For example, even Sau, if you're at 1 damage and you get a heal, you can just heal back to 0.
Yeah. And
you can just play the grade 2 game. And Alania is really one of those cards that help you do that as well. So it's CB1 Soul Blast 1, choose a grade 2 or less from your drop, and call it to Rigard, and it gets plus 5k. Sometimes you'll write units that are useful as well as Rigards later on, so this can also kind of like fetch them out of Soul to grab them as well.
Soul Blast, we call them out. Is there Hula to protect whatever it is attacking from like Denial Griffin and stuff, or do you use the sideways move?
Yes, there will be a synergy with Alania later on that I'll mention with the G-Guard, but Urjula is there to protect. So if you think about it, your Cecilia Reverse and also your Usurp Dragons are going to be on that Rigard circle with the stacked force markers. You could put Urjula behind that as a standing unit, and it'll protect it from like a Denial Griffin or a Cannoneer, you know, those kinds of cards. And every single card that comes into that circle continuously gets protected by this card too.
Right. That is very cool.
And furthermore, that's why this grade 2 Musketeer is here too as well, because you'll run into instances where, let's say it's not like a Denial Griffin, but it's a Cannoneer. The key wording with Cecilia Reverse is that it has to see a front row lock card. So if they get rid of the other front row, then you can't rewrite into Vanguard. Does that make sense? Yes. So then Favila is that where basically it gives Cecilia Reverse and itself resist and power of 6k as well.
Oh,
so now your front row is resist. I think it's cool because it so happens to be a Musketeer on top of that, so the synergy is really good.
It's a common, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So like a lot of these for people, this deck has a lot of different cards, and which may seem a little scary, but Rotting Usurp is like a single rare, I think, or a common.
It's a common and a hollow.
Yeah, common and a hollow, so very easy to find.
Yeah.
Alania is a double R, I think, but but is pretty cheap at the time of recording this.
Yeah.
Urhula like kind of went up in price recently, and I don't know why, because it's not really doing a lot in general.
Right.
But it's only a one of.
Yeah. Especially in premium decks. The other reason that it might have gone up is because of Leonor in Standard. There's some builds that are playing it.
Right. That is a good point. And then also it's from DBTO1. It hasn't gotten a reprint yet. So
yeah, it's from the early sets of Overdress. Yep.
That's why. So it might see a reprint soon, then they'll go down. And that'll be easy to fix. Once again, Hanali shows up. I don't need to sing Hanali's praises. Always a thing. The Overtrigger is here. You can run the vanilla one and be okay, right? Because it's just 2 front row dudes.
Yes and no. I mean, you still benefit from being an Overtrigger, that's fine. But the awkward thing is that with the Cray Elemental, you technically usually put it on both the columns, right?
Right.
but Cecilia
One
Reverse
slot.
needs to see another front locked.
Got it.
You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah.
So you might not get as beneficial from the Cray one.
Okay. So recommended is Blessed Favor.
Yeah, they came out with the reprints too. So there's
That's
more.
true. I forgot about the reprints. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
literally this weekend as a recording. Yeah.
Okay. And then also that
I picked
order
up myself as well.
Condensation, spiritual body condensation.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to also talk about some synergy. And with the spiritual body condensation, you can replace this with Bell from Stokea if you're playing against a lot of Norakami. This was just me replacing Bell to have some more consistency behind it. And with Ladislava, you can search. I guess that goes to it. Where is it? Sweetberry. Ooh.
I think on the okay.
Yeah, let me break that down. Where like you can search this, add this to hand, and then you can call cards like Urzula if you need it for that turn.
Right.
If you don't need Urzula, then you can go into Sweetberry. Oh, this is the V one, the G era one.
Okay.
So this one is because it's another way of grabbing your Cecilia Reverse. So if you don't have a grade 3 on hand or on the field, you can at least search grade 1s. This goes back to deck. You can choose your Vanguard, that's a Cecilia Reverse, and you can search for another copy and call it to Rearguard Circle directly from deck.
Cool.
Yeah. So you can search for a grade 3 or search for a grade 1 to get to the Cecilia Reverse, essentially. And this gets often searched if you go that route, and so you can add Urzula in hand if you want to. You could add the Spiritual Body Condensation, the Hanali, and also the grade 1 PG for Musketeers. You can add a PG from hand, from deck to hand.
That is very cool.
Yeah, and
what's
funny
the
enough,
drop zone effect on that?
Yeah, I was gonna get into that actually. Yeah. It's funny, you play this card for the cost of the skill. You bind this card, but then you actually return another card from your drop zone to the bottom of your deck, so you can actually return triggers too. A lot of the... Go ahead.
I just said that is cool.
Oh yeah, a lot of the other Musketeer and Neo Nectar stuff specifically returns normal units. This is one of the few cards that can actually return triggers, but you could also return copies of Cecilia in general. So that's always important. And the point that I was trying to get with the G-Guard, there is some interaction that you can do during your opponent's turn. And this also explains why I'm playing certain cards in the main deck as well. So when you G-Guard, you can call a card from your hand to Rearguard Circle. And it'll get resist, you'll get shield value. It's pretty cool that it gives resist, because then you can actually call cards like Hanali and give a resist.
On the opponent's turn. Yeah,
yep.
That's kind of how Hanali evolved, from being, I'm going to put this on my board and good luck, to, I'm calling this during your battle phase.
Yep.
You're dead.
Gotcha.
Gotcha! Yeah. Also, fun fact, Rain Breath Dragon is the first G-Guard that was ever revealed in the anime.
Oh, yeah, because of...
Tokoha.
Tokoha, with Asha. Yep.
And the only reason I know this is I just finished a rewatch of G, so...
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, Rain Breath is important for doing the things that you just said, like dropping on.
Yeah, and that's why I even said if you want to play, like, instead of Spiritual Body Condensation, you play the Bell, you can call Bell during your opponent's turn. That can
put everything back?
The bind zone, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. There's also one thing to know with Cho-Oh. Cho-Oh has to see no standing front row rearguards.
Mm-hmm.
So you can call anything with Rain Breath in the front row during their Vanguard swing, so then at the end of the battle, those Cho-Ohs can't restand.
Okay, so important to put it in the front row. Then.
Yeah, in that case, in scenario. Otherwise, you can put things in the back row just to keep them safe. But it's just like one of those little things that you can do against even Norakami, for example. That's why even Alania gets more value, because she does go off, because she's called from hand during your opponent's turn.
Right.
And so this can get you the Hanali that's in the drop zone, where people are like, okay, the Hanali's out of his deck, it's in the drop zone, so I have no fear. But then like, haha, I got it, you know. It's just a chain.
The following turn, you can just sack off the Hanali for whatever skill.
Yeah, you can sack it off, or you can even lock it.
That's true. Oh, that's nice.
So you just turn it off on your turn, and you still keep it.
Mm-hmm. Can you explain a little more about the G-Zone? Like, what other strides do you get into, if that?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of your strides are resource management, and that's why there's even cards like the Susana. This is the 5K that actually Soul Blast 2 countercharge 2.
Okay.
Even the old, not the old V-Series Musketeer, this one, if it's placed or sees something else place, it retires itself to countercharge.
Okay.
And even the old Musketeer crit, when it's placed, it also countercharges 2 cards.
Ooh. That's super nice.
It's really nice. So,
right, so call countercharge 2, activate the trigger effect, plus 5k and a crit somewhere?
Yep. Yeah, literally. It lets you extend to for the Cecilia reverses if you only have 1 or 2 counterbusts to go into the turn. So the reason I bring those up is because your G zone's kind of like that. I even said this in my deck profile that I made, is that I feel a lot of empathy now for Neo Nectar players.
They had a rough time.
Yeah.
Like, they had a main character who was getting stuff near constantly, and it just never quite had the oomph to really break into the top tier. They did with the Katrina Stride, but then that was deemed too broken and they killed it, which at the time it was. I don't know if that's the case anymore. It could be like you can maybe bring it back and that's okay, but
it's still very strong. So that's kind of a gray area. I'll leave it as that. But yeah, a lot of the other strides that are actually decently good are also kind of locked behind bloom units or bloom abilities.
I see.
So a lot of the musketeer stuff, especially other stuff in Neo Nectar, doesn't really have that anymore. Especially they don't have the keyword too on top of that.
Yeah. That is rough. So like this stride is one of the more recent ones where they're like, okay, we can stop doing it.
It's honestly their saving grace.
So is the rest of the G zone just kind of there? Or
yeah. So with Ladislava, that's why I play like 3 of them, as you can see. The other stride that you'll go into is Lieta. And the third one would be Invierno. Because Inviernos, you use it for the first go. It'll Soul Blast, and you can return up to 5 normal units from your rear guard or drop zone, put it back into your deck. And then you'll actually countercharge and soul charge on top of that. But it's more important to return Cecilias and Saúls, and you can do that in multiples, because there's another stride that specifically says they have to be different name, for example.
I see.
So, but Lete is a good card because it actually gains the names from the soul too.
Oh.
So you could also call grade 2 units to build a board. So you can technically have nothing and you build a full board, and still be set up with the Cecilia reverse going into your battle phase kind of thing. So, and then okay.
The Neo Nectar would just benefit from something like the boat or whatever, where it gets out of the way and then allows you to do Vanguard stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point you brought up, because as I was playing Neo Nectar, it reminded me a lot of Grand Blue. And the thing that I think Neo Nectar is trying to do with Cecilia Reverse is really bad bounty.
Right.
In Grand Blue. And the toolboxing is, a lot of it's from deck, and then thank God they're able to recycle back to deck. Yeah. It's similar to Grand Blue, where it's trying to put everything into the drop zone kind of thing. So if you're playing Grand Blue, you'll love this deck too in that avenue or aspect of it.
Any deck that can like spam call stuff really benefits from like recycling. They finally gave Royal Paladin the ability to recycle from drop back into deck with their Jewel Knight stuff, and it like took them this long. Like, dude.
Yeah.
And then I see that you have the Progenitor and the Zeroth Dragon in there, which they're not super.
Kinda.
Are they?
Yeah, I'll talk about it.
Okay, because like they suck in Great Nature now.
I'll show you why.
Okay.
So one quick thing with Ladislava, the second skill is almost like a Lambros. So if you have 2 or more rearguards with the same name, it just stands them when it attacks. This came up for me a lot because I have a good buddy of mine named Duke Cardfight, and he plays Mega Colony. Okay. So if you are Gradora locked, you can't do squat. Because everything depends on calling from the deck. And if you at least add to hand and be able to have duplicates on your field, you can at least restand. And also, like, if you have stunned rear guards, you can stand them too as well. So I just thought I'd throw that in.
That is nice.
Yeah. And so the reason that I mentioned about Megaloma and Zoa, the one thing I don't like about Zoa is that it calls from hand. So if you call the Cecilia, it doesn't, because it's not from deck. But it doesn't do much besides just like, hey, put it on place. But now you give that rearguard the ability, right? Where it cannot be chosen card effects, it gets this power, and then also auto, when it deals damage, it loses. You can still do double Vanguard attack on a Zoa turn.
Really?
Yeah, because you get
That's
the
pretty
unit.
crazy.
Yeah, so if you have it set it up that way, you can do that. The other thing, it doesn't synergize as well because you do want like a standing unit for Cecilia to lock, so it's kind of awkward. But this comes up even more. Oh wow, that's a small image. It's the Megaloloma. So you stride this, you discard 2. Basically, next turn, if you get to 6 damage, you shuffle everything from hand. You shuffle your damage back to deck as well, and then put 5 new damage, and then immediately end your opponent's turn. However, you go into your turn with like no hand, right? Mm-hmm. You would know. I would know. At this point now, because I play this. But you can do a double Vanguard attack, again, with Cecilia reverse. So if you know you're probably going to lose, but still want to do some aggression, you can do that. And that's why this card, Leeta, is also important too, because you still have a G-Zone. Yeah. So you can go into this if you're able to stride it at least, and you can build a field from nothing too.
That's admittedly in that case, but just like so infuriating with Megaloma working how it goes. Like, most of the progenitor dragons are kind of butt anyway. Like, I think this one is without question the worst one. So I don't know. Like, it has its merits in this, admittedly way better than Great Nature does. But is it really that important, both of them, or can you live without them?
You can live without them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can live without both of them, to be honest. 9 times out of 10, you're gonna go into Ladislava and then Leeta, for example. And then Invierno's there for the recycling, which comes up here and there. Sandrine doesn't come up as often, but she's there. So the concept with her too is that you can do Invierno, or you can do another stride effect, and then stride this over just to give your Vanguard also crit pressure.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And then you can still do the rewrite to get another Vanguard attack.
Sweet.
Your Vanguard's literally going through like 3 to 4 forms that turn. I think the biggest thing to also talk about is the new G-Guard that also came in Premium Collection.
Okay.
Because this actually lets you recycle 2 normal units with the same name from your rearguard or drop, which Cecilia is obviously.
Right.
And then if you put 2, you countercharge on top of that, and you get plus 15. So it's big shield.
Nice.
You recycle, and you countercharge. Like, this one you'll use often. And so this deck doesn't really run into counterblast issues, really. It's just knowing how to mange with them and knowing when to G-Guard, and then of course take advantage of the main deck countercharging too.
I see Dismal also in there. I think in general, if you're getting into premium, Dismal as a card is nice to have. 9 times out of 10, no matter what deck you're playing, there will be times where your opponent's like, I want that thing dead, and I'm not going to stop until it is, and it's just nice to be able to take the pressure off of that.
You can
for regard-centric decks like this.
Yeah, exactly. And you could protect certain units like Ursula and Hanali if either they're in the front row or if there's some effect that actually targets them by battle or something, like brawlers, kind of like in that effect. There's a lot of little things you can do to protect those cards.
Is there anything else in the G-Zone that we haven't covered yet?
There's the Ontario. This is a big shield. This happens if you have 1 or less or 4 or more, so it's just nice to have. This is actually plus 20k shield if you fully... I know, it's fat.
That's super good.
And then you got the GB 1 flip just to flip a card for Lete, for example. Nice. But it also calls a card from hand and gets more shield. So if you really need a shield and flip fodder, this could be an option instead of Rain Breath as well.
Is there a stride that benefits with having more things face up in G-Zone?
Yeah, Lete. She calls G-Zone +1.
Got it. Okay. So so I guess the sweet spot there is having 4 face up in G-Zone, or 4 and then she flips 1.
Yeah, because your first stride with Ladislava, she doesn't flip anything, which could be good or bad depending on what you want from it. So if you G-Guard with this, then you have 3 face up, you stride this, and then you flip this, you have 4 face up, now +1 is 5, so full field.
Full field, baby. Yeah, that was pretty much it, right?
Yeah, it's one of those decks that honestly I'm still learning myself too, and I would recommend practicing with it because it's very technical.
I think Neo Nectar in general is just one of those clans where it didn't really get any attention until G era. That's not to say they didn't release anything, but they just sort of left it alone for the most part. So you don't really have that fan base that a lot of other clans have, and I think that is something that makes it underrated. You can just get the drop on the opponent, because then they'll be like, okay, you're calling plant tokens, and holy shit, you rode your Vanguard again.
It's like,
Okay,
that thing's coming back from the drop zone. What is this, Grand Blue?
This is happening again. Yeah, so it's definitely something I would consider picking up. A, if you're like into trying new things. B, if you're a Grand Blue fan, like you said. Or C, just really like Link Joker and don't want to spend money. So
that's funny. The one thing I'll say though, last time I checked, these are kind of hard to get.
Oh, they are.
If you have them, great.
Yeah.
If you don't, you may have to invest a little bit. But everything else, for the most part,
it's that Maelstrom problem.
Yeah, literally. It's
plus
literally
side reverse is pretty cheap, right? Like that's the important.
Yeah, I actually got SPs for myself. Yeah,
pretty easy. The D stuff, the overdressed stuff that you're bringing over, is super cheap, minus Urhula, but it'll probably go down at some point.
Yeah, you don't even have to play Urhula, but it was just one of those things that I added myself just to have an extra layer of resistance.
And your G zone in general is pretty cheap because Neo Nectar. So
yeah, literally, if you were to only get a few cards, I would grab 3 of these. Definitely this G guard. Find some rain brass for sure, and then at least a pair of this, and then the one recycle card. It could be the other one that's like a rare. It's like a tree looking thing. It almost looks like Zoa. But this one can do multiples of the same card, so that's why I picked Ingerno.
Thanks everybody for watching. Let us know what you think. Let me know what clan you want to see me cover next, because I'm just kind of doing this until I get them all. Did you like this deck profile? Is Neo Nectar interesting to you? Leave a comment and all that good stuff. Jaime, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Always a pleasure to be on the channel.
Yeah, check out his channel, which again will be linked in the description.
Also, if you want to see more in-depthness and also see it in action too, I actually made a deck profile recently too, so you guys can get a better idea than just, seeing a deck log in that aspect too.
Link to that will be in the description, and I'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.